good. Okay. Well, this is the neighborhood traffic calming public meeting for Florence Street or Florence Avenue from 36th Street to 31st Street. And I'm Jeremy Staley. I work for CEC. We are a consulting firm that is on contract with the city of Tulsa to assist them with the neighborhood traffic calming program. We've been doing that since the fall of 2015. With me tonight are Russell Bausch and Michael Van Slyke. They are both traffic engineers at the city of Tulsa, and they've been involved in this program. Michael,
So you got it?
I went ahead and muted there real quick, Dennis. So Russell and Michael are traffic engineers. Russell's been with the city of Tulsa for a few years now and knows this program quite well. And so I'm glad they are with me today. We're going to go over a few ground rules real quickly. So we are recording this meeting and it is going to be posted on the city of Tulsa's YouTube channel. Also, another way for people to be able to find this is through a link on the city's Improve Our Tulsa website. There's a link down at the bottom of that page that provides them a link to the YouTube channel. So if you have any issue finding that, I can share my screen with you here real quick and show you where that is found on that. That way you can pass that off. Just one second, let me share my screen here real quickly. So this is the city of Tulsa's Improve Our Tulsa website. Down at the bottom, here it says traffic calming public meetings. You can click on this link and this takes you to their YouTube channel and you can see some of our older meetings from a year or so ago, and they will be located on this site. Okay. All right. So I asked that I'm going to mute all the participants during this presentation, and I ask if you could just hold your questions until the end. I normally, if we're in person, I encourage people to ask questions throughout the meeting, but since it's in a video situation, it's harder to hear those questions and get those moving answered right. So I ask just write your questions down, or you can type them in the chat box. There's a chat feature down at the bottom. You can click on that chat box, and many times Russell or Michael will answer those questions as I go along with this presentation. So feel free to use that. Okay, so this project started back in March of 2018 when Mr. Dennis Murphy, who's on here with us, submitted an application for a traffic calming project. By doing so, Mr. Murphy became what we call the traffic calming advocate for this street. And because funds had been depleted already for the neighborhood traffic calming program, we had to wait until more funds were made available in order for us to do our traffic study. And those funds came through the Improve Our Tulsa 2 funding package. And so we got those funds in early 2020 and started doing up some traffic studies, and then COVID hit. So we're in the middle of a pandemic and it changed traffic patterns and everything. So we had to suspend that traffic study program until about the summertime. And so we were able to do the traffic study for this particular project in June of 2020. And so there's two major warrants that are needed in order to move a traffic study forward into the next phase. And those two warrants are, we check the 85th percentile speed, and that must be at least 5 miles per hour higher than the speed limit. And so on this particular project, the 85th percentile was 30.2 miles per hour. It just went over that 30 mile per hour mark, but it's still warranted. The second warrant is that average daily traffic needs to be between 600 and 5,000 vehicles per day. The city doesn't have enough funds to be able to put these all over the city where there's not much traffic involved. And likewise, they don't want to put them in a place where there's very, very heavy traffic demand. So if it's lower than 600 or greater than 5,000, the project will not warrant. In the case of our project here, again, we barely made over the mark. We had 604 vehicles per day on one of the days when we tested, which we do these traffic studies over a full 7-day period of time, a full week. So the project warranted on both of those. Other factors that we consider for eligibility are the street needs to provide access to abutting residential properties, meaning if this street goes entirely through apartment complexes and commercial areas, it doesn't qualify. The street must have only one traffic lane in each direction, meaning this is not intended for a street where they've got two lanes both ways. The street segment must be at least 300 feet long, which of course here we're about half a mile long. The street must have a regulatory speed of 30 miles per hour or less. And typically, if it is over 30 miles per hour, it's considered a urban collector street and would be disqualified from that. Also, the street typically needs to have curb and gutter. And the reason for that is when people get upset about speed humps, they'll just drive around them, especially if there's ditches there and they're very shallow. So having them in a curb and guttered section keeps those vehicles on the street to prevent them from driving past them and knocking over mailboxes and trash cans and whatnot. Also, these speed humps can't be installed on streets where we've got traffic signals on each end of the street segment, because that signifies the amount of traffic that goes through there and the importance of that street within the city's transportation network. Bottom line, these speed humps are intended for residential neighborhoods where people are out walking about, and we want to keep those speeds down and the volumes lower if at all possible. So once a project warrants, we do that traffic study and we hit the warrants and we make sure all those other factors are good and construction funding is available. The next step is to move forward with a petition and an endorsement process. So in a petition process, we mail the petition to our street advocate and we provide them a list of addresses from the beginning and end of the project. Any property that abuts this street, whether their mailbox is on that street and their address is, or even if the property touches it, but their mailbox and drive are on one of the connector streets, it still qualifies as a viable address along that street. So we send them a list. We have two requirements within the petition process. One is we have to get at least 80% of the property, the residences on that street to sign the petition. They could sign yes or no, but we have to have at least 80% of them to be contacted. That way, the supermajority of the people on the street are aware that this traffic calming project is moving forward and very well speed humps could be on their street. On this particular project, we ended up with 87% of the residences that signed that petition. So it well exceeded 80%. The second thing is 67%, 2/3 of the residences must say yes. They must be in favor of the speed humps. And in this project, everybody that signed that petition was in favor of it. So we had 87% of the people on the street were in favor of this. The second part of this process is the endorsement process. And that is if there is a homeowners association that has a governing authority over that street, they have to be in favor of it as well. We have to have signatures from the president or officers within that HOA stating that they are in agreement with it. In the case of this project, there is no HOA. So we did not have to have that piece of that documentation done. So once the petition and the endorsement process is complete, we design the speed hump layout. We use an aerial view of the street and we show where those speed humps are located and we provide dimensions in there. And I'll show these here to you in just a moment. So the speed humps are located at spacings as directed by the traffic calming program design criteria. And in that criteria, they have minimum distances between the speed humps. They typically want the speed hump to be no closer to an intersection than a certain distance. And they don't want the distances between them to be any greater than 600 feet. And the reason for that is people will gun it. They'll speed up in between the speed humps if that speed or if that distance exceeds 600 feet. There were some speed humps put in under a different direction years and years ago before we got involved in this. And at that time, requirements were different and some of those spacings got up to 800 and 900 feet and we still had some speeding issues in between there. So limiting that distance to 600 feet is very important. Okay, I am now going to share my screen and we'll go over the layout for these speed humps. And
Jeremy,
yes,
this is Russell.
Yes,
Hey, I've got a question.
yes.
Bill Hadley said the north part of Florence Avenue does not have traditional curbs. He says, is this going to be an issue to qualify for the program?
Now, when you say traditional curbs, are they roll curbs or are they just shallower curbs because of overlays?
They're kind of, I guess you call it roll curb. I mean, there's really not much of a curb. I mean, there's a quasi gutter where water does stay on the side of the street, but you can drive up into the yard without batting an eye. You're not going to have to hit an edge to go up into it.
Yeah, we've had neighborhoods before where there is a there's been so many overlays that have taken place on the project, and that
That's
might
the
be
instance with this, like, that appears to be
okay.
why the
The
curbs are so
overlay.
short, is it's just been overlaid numerous times.
Right, and we're not going to disqualify this street because of that. It's unfortunate, but was a technique the city's maintenance group has done over the years, just to overlay. It's very common as far as pavement engineering to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you bringing that up. All right, I'm going to share my screen now, and we'll go over the layout of the plans here. This one. Okay. Here, all right. And y'all see the plan sheets here? And these plans are just like the ones that were mailed out to you. So if you do have those, feel free to utilize those and you can follow along. So we're starting on the very first sheet. And on the top left corner, that is at the south end of the project at 36th Street. North is pointed up to the right. So our first speed hump that we have is about 330 foot off of from the south end of the project. Generally, we like that to be a little closer, but with the drives that are located through here and the proximity to 35th Place, it caused us to push that thing up further to the north. We generally try to keep these speed humps, if at all possible, about 10 foot away from the driveways. If we can get more than that, that'd be great. And the reason for that is people can, when they back in and out of their drive, we don't want them hitting those speed humps all the time. And so if we can avoid that and try and get more space between the driveway and the speed hump, we do. We also try not to put them right directly in front of sidewalks. As you can see on this first speed hump, we do have a sidewalk that goes off here to the north, but at least we didn't put it right directly in front, it's slightly off to the side. So our first speed hump is located just north of 35th Place, around 3530 South Florence Avenue. Now we've got a big long gap over this next one, and the reason for that is we've got stop signs here at 35th Street, and we try to keep those speed humps away from those stop signs, just because people are already in the stopping motion, and we don't want that speed hump to happen at the same time. So this one we did stretch the distance. It is right at about 600 feet to our next speed hump, which shows up on this second sheet, and we're just immediately south of 34th Street here. Then we've got, it's close to around another 600 foot from here up to the next one. Again, we tried to keep this one a little further from the stop sign at 33rd Street as well. So this particular speed hump's around 3255 South Florence Avenue at the bottom of that sheet number 2. And then moving further to the north, we've got, looks like about 400 foot spacing to the fourth speed hump. And that is shown here around 3220 South Florence Avenue. And then our last speed hump, our fifth one, is just north of 32nd Street, approximately 300 foot from 31st Street to the south. Now, the fourth sheet that was included in your plan set is our speed hump details. And we want you to, I'm going to focus in on what these look like and how big they are. So from a plan point of view, like if you were looking down on the street, this is what the speed hump is going to look like. It's 22 foot long. As your car were to go over it, 22 foot long. And we put this thing 2 foot from the face of the gutter to allow water, storm drainage flow to get down the street. And as you can see, we've got pavement markings on here per the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, MUTCD, which governs signage locations and striping. And then we have signs on the corner of each of these that say speed hump and have a little arrow pointing down. Now, the reason why we put these signs there is to besides the striping on the pavement, it's another notification for the drivers to know, hey, there's a speed hump going there. I know the striping will fade over time and the city will do their best to maintain that, but that sign will be able to remain there for a long time and people will be able to see that. The sign is also there for when we have events just like we've had this week, where we have snow and ice and sleet. Sometimes it's really hard to see those speed humps when you've got several inches of snow. And so if the city or other private entities go through and they're plowing the street, we want them to know that speed hump is there. That way they can make an adjustment and not damage the pavement or their plow. So that is what the plan view looks like. From an elevation view, meaning we're looking like into the side of the speed hump. This section AA at the top left corner of that page shows what that is. the very first 6 foot or the approach 6 foot, it's parabolic in shape. So it increases from the existing grade up to 3.5 inches over a distance of 6 foot. It's not linear in there, it's parabolic in shape, but it's a very gradual transition, and it rides really well. If you're going 20 mile an hour, you can go over these speed humps really well. They ride very nicely. There's a platform that's fairly flat up on top of 10 foot, and then it shapes back down in a parabolic shape. So these are not speed bumps that you see in commercial areas. They are speed humps, and they do drive well so long as people do not drive at excessive speeds. That was the intention of these. This detail down here at the bottom shows the chevron markings for the pavement detail, typical painting for that. Okay, let me move on with the rest of this. Let's see. As stated before, our funding source for this program is the Improve Our Tulsa 2 funds. I'm going to stop sharing the screen here. I'll be happy to go back to that if anybody does have any questions over that. So construction will begin on this project as soon as possible. Now, there's one thing that will happen after this meeting, and so we have to allow a 2-week comment period for comments that you may have or other people on the street to provide to us, and to see if we can address those comments if at all possible. And so the city will typically get this video posted on their YouTube channel within a few business days. I anticipate they'll have it up by sometime next week. And so that 2-week countdown time will start there. Once that 2-week time is done, if there's anything we can address, changing things in the plans, we do that, and the plans are finalized and they're sent off to the Streets and Stormwater Group at the city. And the funding is already available to start this. So the only thing that would be slowing them down is the warmer weather. Obviously, we can't construct these speed humps with temperatures in the 20s. So we've got to wait for the springtime to come. Typically by mid to late March, it's warm enough for them to be able to construct these. And then another thing that could perhaps hold them back from starting in late March to early April would be if there is a lot of road maintenance issues that take place, which get exacerbated dramatically when we have these freeze thaw periods of time. I know as of before this last winter event hit through, the potholes weren't very bad, so we're not quite sure how that's going to affect with the cold weather that we had with this last spell. Last year, we had that snowmageddon, ice-mageddon thing, and the city was repairing potholes for a few months. We weren't able to start on our projects, I think, until June or July. It took up a lot of their time to fix all the potholes. So that may push this project back another month or two. Let's see, I believe okay, one more thing. So comments can be provided directly to me, and there's 2 ways to do that. I'm going to share my screen real quickly and put up here my email address and my phone number. So, wrong thing here. My bad. Okay, so my email address is jeremy.staley@connectcec.com. And that's jeremy.staley@connect, like connect the cable, followed by cec.com. And my phone number is 918-663-9401. So I'll leave that up there on the screen here for just a moment longer. But please, if you have any comments or questions after this meeting, send them to me this way, and we'll make sure that we can take a look at those and see if we can get anything addressed. I'm now going to go back to the plans, and if anybody has any questions about this at all, now it's a good time to ask that.
Hey, Jeremy, go to the very last page for a second.
Yes,
One thing
sir.
I want to talk to him about was the section BB. If you can zoom out
BB.
of that, please.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So this detail right here, it shows the beginning of the speed hump from the face of curb, which Jeremy mentioned earlier was 2 foot. We've had requests from bicyclists to add a 2-foot taper to shallow out the edges of it. And we'd had some speed humps in the past that weren't as bicycle friendly. And so we got asked by the Bicycle and Pedestrians Advocate Committee to actually reduce that taper to make it so bicyclists and pedestrians could actually walk by there a little bit easier. So it not only helps bicyclists, but people that are pushing strollers or whatever else, it just makes it a little bit more usable speed hump for all users.
Very good. Thank you, Russell. So does anybody have any questions over this or the layout? Or any questions in general at all? It's what this meeting is about, is to answer any questions you may have.
Jeremy, I've got a question about the location of the last one in the order of how you've gone through things.
Yes, sir. This
So,
particular-
yeah, that's the one that's in front of, I'm in 3124 and Dennis is across the street at 3125.
okay,
Since we don't have, it actually, as you go around the corner on 32nd, we actually have a proper curb that starts at the corner that runs to the west.
Yes.
But for whatever, as they said, if they overlaid it enough that the curb's kind of gone, then so be it. We're at the bottom of the hill and I get a ton of runoff water that comes ripping down off of my property. And if you can believe it, the house at 3116, when we had that crazy 4 or 5 inch rain, he had a lake underneath his house that was leaking out of his crawl space vents.
whoa,
So yeah, there's a transformer vault that's right there. If you move your hand right there,
yes,
we had surface water that was going into the vault and making its way through the conduit to the back of Dennis's house and coming up and out of his meter can. So it's possible for us to get a lot of water. We're kind of concerned about where the location of that speed hump is, since we don't have gutters, that it can create a dam and start sending that water over into his yard. We're curious that now there's a manhole cover that's just right where that transformer box is, and it's the sewer line runs underneath that fence between my house and 3116 and runs up the hill to the west. We're wondering if that speed hump could be moved to the north and placed there so that whatever surface water we've got isn't going to get dammed by this thing, since we don't have good gutters.
sure. I pulled this up on Google Earth where we could see this a little clearer. So as
Yep.
you said, this is a transformer vault in question, and then we've got a storm, I'm imagining
Yep.
this water manhole right in the middle of the street.
Yep.
We can look into that. It might be possible to put it right up here.
Okay.
In that location. The runoff, let's see, elevation wise, so this thing runs to the south here,
Yep.
correct? Okay,
Yep.
very good. We can look to see, it's too close to try and put in between here, the driveways are too close together. And this we don't want to do either, because you'd have to push it up pretty far to the north. Visually,
How much have you, how long is you're at what, 22 feet?
they're 22 foot, and we try to keep it 10 foot away from each drive. So we need a space of at least typically 42, preferably 48 or 50 foot in order to put that speed hump in there. And it's very well could be possible.
Mary's got a full turnaround, so I don't think it'd be an issue if you came back and you put it close to, I just don't know how far off of that manhole you got to go and how close you get to Mary's property. She's got that yellow van in the picture right there. So I don't know if you just, because she never nobody's ever backing out of that driveway.
Out of this one here,
No, come to the south.
this one here.
No one backs out of
This-
that one right there. So I just don't know if there's enough space between the manhole cover and the start of her driveway there on the east side.
I believe the reason we pushed it this far to begin with is the gap that we have up at the north end right here. To take a distance from that radius up to equivalent of about right in here. As you can see, that distance is about 40 foot. So it's pushing the limits of what we desire. And we could put it in there. We'd only end up with about 8 foot or so on each side. But that may be the next best place to put it is right up there. The spacing would be too short right here. And I don't think we gain much by putting it right here, because we're still right by that transformer, like you said.
I'm okay with it being by the transformer, because then somebody's less likely to drive around it, since we don't have much of the way of curbs. I just don't know if there's enough distance there between her edge and that manhole cover, because no one ever backs out of her driveway. And I don't see her having an issue.
Right. Well,
And it keeps you a little further off of 31st Street, but
yeah, the concern I'd have for that is because we have to stay clear of the manhole.
Right.
And the rim around here. So the speed hump it'd have to start here. The distance I measured with that yellow line is only 26 foot. It would put the northern end of that speed hump probably 2 foot away from her radius, which is, it's pushing it for us to do that. And I know she normally doesn't back out that way, but if someone's traffic pattern took them south to 36th
Right.
Street, they'd be running over that thing at times. So I have a feeling based off what you said, the best place for us to move it would be up here a little closer to the intersection. And we're in good shape with the distance between that next speed hump to the south. We wouldn't be exceeding any distance there at all.
Okay.
So we could put it probably right in this area here and make that.
Hey, Jeremy,
work.
that distance that you're proposing right there, how far south of 31st would that be?
It's not very far. Let's back to Google Earth here real quick. We would end up being probably from here. We'd end up being probably 70 foot away. I know ideally we prefer it to be a little further than that.
Yeah, if that
And
doesn't work, do you guys ever incorporate stop signs as part of this? Because I guess we could consider putting a stop sign there at 32nd there at our intersection. I don't know if that's an alternative.
There's a whole, go
stop.
ahead, Russell.
Yeah, stop signs aren't meant to be used as a speed control. In the part of the MPTCD, you have to do a warrant analysis, and you have to prove that it's actually needed. But the MPTCD, it does not recommend using stop signs for speed control.
Okay. Well, we'll
Hey,
take
Jeremy.
a look at that. Yes, sir.
So that speed hump that's the furthest north, if we by chance if we take that one out, so we'd have the 297 plus 111 plus 186. How far would that push that last speed hump from 31st if the one furthest north is taken out?
Well, what we could do, the one at 3220,
Right.
I have to look at it, but we could, since there's no stop sign controlled at 32nd Street, we could slide this speed hump up closer here to where that gap to match line E might be around 80 or 100 feet. So that would push us around, what, 350, 380 feet from the intersection, to where
Yeah.
eliminating this one might be the best choice, and we just slide this speed hump up further to the north, closer to 32nd Street. It might be better to do that, especially with the big sump inlets that we have that they're talking about right on his property.
Yeah, I think that might be a better option than rather than having that one so close to the 31st.
Yeah, we have guidelines that we try to stay between. It's things like this that we just have to think outside the box. Of course, we don't want to squish it so close to driveways to where we're violating that principle. The better thing would be, let's just eliminate one and try and move things around a bit. So I like your idea, Russell. We could slide this 4 speed hump up further to the north and eliminate that one entirely. That way we're not people coming right off 31st Street and hitting the speed hump within the first second and a half or two of their travel.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
they're
guess
not hitting so
if-
close, and that way they're not having drainage issues like they're mentioning.
Would that work for you well, Bill and Dennis?
I'm okay with that, but Dennis, you need to come off mute and let me know if that's an issue or not. You can, Dennis, I can't hear you. You can unmute down in the lower left corner. Or maybe Jeremy, you can unmute him.
I asked,
Okay, can
yeah,
you hear me now?
there we go.
There, I can hear you now, Dennis.
Okay, if you eliminate this speed hump between 31st and 32nd, there are a lot of people that come down this hill, 32nd Street, fly down that hill and spin around that corner almost on 2 wheels and fly up to 31st Street. If you eliminate that hump, that's just going to keep happening. This isn't going to do any good down at this end. So you got to do something. I don't know, either put a stop sign here, and that might not be a bad idea, putting a stop sign. Can you see my cursor?
No, I can't. You're
Okay,
talking
putting a stop sign. Yeah, coming down 32nd Street when you hit Florence Avenue, the people coming from the west to the east, put a stop sign there where these people have to start stopping. So if you eliminate this speed hump altogether, then you at least need to put a stop sign in there.
And I think that's what they were saying, that stop signs aren't part of the interaction with this, Dennis.
Okay,
So
okay.
I think I think the alternative then is maybe, and I don't know how this jams up the one further down the road, but for you and me, if it's got to go between us, if you move it, you're putting it too close. I think it's too close to 31st Street. And if it's too tight to come off of the manhole cover, then it's got to go further to the south.
Right, and that was ideally why we put it in the location it was at. This distance of 297 is technically it's further than what we ideally want the speed hump to go. We generally try and keep it within 150 to 250 foot from the beginnings of the block. And so we already violated that because there's no way we could move it in this ideal range because of the manhole and because of the drive location. So at this end, we put it at the ideal location. It just happens to be near that drainage inlet. Of course, we're not in front of that drainage inlet, but I do know putting this speed hump there will cause more water to move out that way. I'm interested on the drainage patterns of 31st Street. So there's a lot of water that comes off 31st Street, and it is possible to look through the city's programming over the next few years to see if there's any street project going on there, because it may be possible to improve the drainage inlets up at the arterial street to help mitigate some of that water from coming down the street. I've done that on several of our designs where the residents in local adjacent streets were complaining about runoff coming off the arterial. And that's something that we can check on. Of course, we only know what work projects are programmed so far up the road.
We don't get much from 31st coming to us.
Right.
Whatever's on 31st stays on 31st, and it actually goes to the east.
Okay.
There used to be a creek. If you look at and you zoom out in Google Earth, and there's a lake or a pond. There used to be a creek that ran behind Dennis's house. And so that's the low spot. 31st, all the water on 31st stays on 31st and ends up in the storm drains down there. When you get past 3116, about just past their the south edge of their driveway, that's where the crown happens, and anything from there south comes to us. Anything north of that goes to 31st.
Okay, so so this water, does this water come down here off of 32nd? Is that where the bulk of the water is coming?
No, it's coming off of my property through drain pipes. It's actual surface rainwater, or we're at the bottom of a pretty big hill.
Okay,
and so any of the water on the property that's coming, actually, if you go back to that house, where you got your cursor all the way up to that house, that's the farmhouse that's got the pool in the back and the big build out. Anything from there, surface wise, comes traveling down and ends up coming out between my house.
No, this will help provide. Nah, it's too fine of a. We're zoomed in too much on these topo maps. Won't do any good. Those topo maps do great when we're looking at miles of area. So I understand what you're saying. The runoff comes from all the properties to your west, and they all flow through your backyard and in your yard and go down to that sump, correct?
Yeah, or we're catching them in catch basins and whatnot, and so then it comes out, and Dennis just sits below me. So if we put a big dam, then all of a sudden we can flood out his garage. So it's trying to find out the way to slow down the cars, but not create a big water issue. So
I know most municipalities have controls when it comes to allowing sheet flow over properties. They only allow so much of it, and then they require it to go into inlets. And the whole purpose of that is they don't want 10 neighbors' yards worth of water running through you because you're at the bottom of that basin. But they didn't design that way back in the years. There was no guidelines or controls to prevent that.
Yeah, I've stopped most of it. That's to the west of the house, to the west of me, where your cursor is, covers the pool. I don't get much from them anymore. That goes into a pipe that's running out to 32nd. But it's the houses behind that I've got a French drain and a catch basin now that's taken their water, because what I built would have flooded 3116's property. So I knew I had to let that water come through, and right now it's on the surface, but it's going into a pipe that's going to have a pop-up right there by that transformer vault box. And so and Dennis and I've seen it as I've been doing construction back here, where that white car shows on my property, there's now a big addition thing in the back. So I've dealt with all the water, but it comes ripping around my house and down the driveway like a river. And so it's trying to figure out the best way to do this. I know this isn't your purvey, and I'll leave it to Dennis on the decision to put the speed hump where he wants it because he faces the issue more than me of people ripping around the corner and coming down, in front of his house at 35 miles an hour. What is the process of putting in a stop sign if we wanted to go that route?
Call 311 and put in a request to put in a stop sign.
Okay.
And then once that request comes in, then we'll do a warrant analysis to see if it meets the warrants per the MUTCD. And if it meets warrants, then we can install one. But if it doesn't meet it, then it wouldn't be installed.
Okay. Yeah, the stop sign that's in the middle of this whole plan down there at 35th-ish was not there for forever. And that one got added maybe 5 years ago. Time goes by, it was probably more than that, but it seems like that was about when they got that one put in there to try to calm some of this.
I do know that there's been other speed hump projects that we've worked in where people knew the right city council member and they said, I need a stop sign there. And in the past, they get their stop sign pretty easily. And the city has gone to the tried and true method of looking at the warrant analysis for MUTCD and not just haphazardly throwing stop signs around because they can make the situation worse potentially. And that's why they've got that warrant analysis. And so that stop sign very well could have gone in through that methodology because the people who worked on other projects like, yeah, that's so-and-so, he knew Councilman so-and-so and he complained and got in a stop sign. And the city won't do that anymore.
Got it. Okay.
Well, I appreciate you letting us know about that. We'll take a look at it. And if you put that process in, request that through 311, Russell and his staff will go through and take a look at that. I do think the best option is probably to keep the speed hump where we've got it. Ideally, that's the best location for it, or we eliminate that, which I know Mr. Murphy is not in favor of because of the speeding that goes on right in front of your properties. I would say drainage wise, this is the sump area, and putting that speed hump in there, especially knowing that the curb and gutter sections, which now I'll pull that up here real quick and go down to street view. Like he said, there's not much of a curb left. Yeah. So it will create a bit of a dam there, but the water just flows over the curb like I'm sure it does right now. It's just a big broad drainage area that just runs with the water. Having that in there, looks like the finished floor elevations of the houses are up high enough that shouldn't cause a problem.
Hey, Jeremy, this is Michael.
Yes.
From looking at the engineering atlas, there is a capital project shown on Florence Avenue from 31st to 36th. That's currently in design.
Who really?
Yes.
Wow, I'm surprised we missed that somehow. Do you know who the consultant is on that?
CP&Y.
CP&Y. Okay.
I can give you a
Well,
number if you'd like. It's IoT 2.
What's that
It's
project number?
2036 N9037Z.
937Z.
Z, yeah.
Z. Okay. I'll ask Patty Parks about that tomorrow. She's our main point of contact on those. What that means to everybody here is if this street is going to have a rehab project on it, this project very well, because we don't want to construct these speed humps and then they get ripped up in another year or two for that project. It very well could delay this. But we're all in favor of having this project all be constructed at the same time when those go on. The good news about this project is those curb and gutter sections that we're talking about issues, they will come back and they will probably end up reconstructing the roadway and putting a good curb and gutter section back, which will help when that water hits the street. It won't go flying out into the right of way as much. So that is the good news about that. I appreciate you finding that, Michael, because that will help with the drainage issue. As a matter of fact,
what's the time frame on that?
You're not a mute.
I'll look into that. I will check with the city tomorrow and I can email you, Dennis, and let you know. Typically non-arterial projects, if everything worked right from the beginning of design to the end, they typically last for more than about 2 to 3 years. There have been some situations where that has extended a lot longer. I know there's the Richmond Hills area. Russell, we started that thing way back in like 16, and it's still not constructed yet because it was with a consulting firm and they lost their owners. One of them passed away and the other one left the company, and the contract had to get moved to another engineering firm, and it was a mess, and it took a very, very
Okay.
long time.
Well, I have a comment. It isn't all, excuse me, throat's getting dry. The curbs are not like this the entire way. Actually, once you get past 33rd Street, they do have curbs and gutters. So those people down there, I guess, could potentially get these speed humps while we will have to wait at this end, unless they plan on doing redoing the entire street, which I, of course, don't know that, but.
I'm gonna look at the Improve Our Tulsa website. Let's see.
I can share my screen if you'd like, Jeremy.
Yeah, go right ahead. That would be the best thing. Yeah, go right ahead. Can you share that, or do I need to make you like a co-host?
Nope, I got an option
Okay,
here. Let's
awesome.
see. I need to find it.
The city has a website that provides those, and they typically show colorized maps of the streets that are being redone. And so what you were talking about, Dennis, they typically don't do just 1 or 2 blocks of the street. It would typically involve the street
It is.
further to the south.
It shows, yeah, here's Florence Avenue. All the way, it's going all the way to 36th Street.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's showing the whole thing, and here's some more info about it. It's in design currently. It was started in 2019, according to this.
Okay.
And its construction dates, construction start dates listed as 2023 here. So
Oh, wow. So we're gonna have to wait quite a while.
That'll be another year potentially. I do know CP&Y is a large firm there. They're not going to go belly up like that last firm did.
Well, now, I read somewhere, I distinctly remember reading somewhere that they actually could put these speed humps in, and then if road repair had to be done, they could take them out and then put them back in.
Well, these speed humps are large asphalt speed humps, so there's no taking out and put them in very easily. They have to be milled off entirely and then completely reconstructed. But with this
Okay.
information, the good news is they should fix the curb and gutter on the street and fix the street drainage. I would imagine that overlay is thicker in the area in front of your properties probably because the large amount of water coming off of that. And if the water doesn't drain very well, it causes the subgrade to stay damp, and the pavement literally, it sinks down into the ground. And so that is very common. And so when they came back, they put on a heavier overlay because the asphalt was probably alligator cracked badly because of subgrade issues. And that's why this area has experienced, and you got very shallow curb compared to further to the south, where they don't experience that problem. At least that's been my experience doing roadway work for the city.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that, Michael. I'll get with Patty tomorrow morning and she can give me an update over that. And of course, if this works, we'll coordinate with CP&Y and make sure that they include our plan sheets into their plans, and we'll bid this out. That will unfortunately delay this project probably a year, but the city's always looking for the best way to handle this project. And it's typically always, if it can be done all inclusive, all together at the same time, we want to do that. We want to be good stewards with the money the city has.
Dennis, you want to call 311 and see if we can get a stop sign process rolling, especially if we're late on this other stuff?
Wouldn't be a bad idea. At least we'll get something out of this.
We'll let Bill do that.
You want to ramrod that, Bill? You seem to be pretty good at thinking those things.
I can try.
It's right across the street from you.
I can try.
Well, any other questions that you have on this project or the program?
I'm a little bit discouraged. That's all I can tell you. I don't have any questions.
I appreciate your
Hey, Jeremy.
patience with this, Mr. Murphy. I know you started this process a long time ago. It just happened to
A
hit.
long time ago.
When we ran out of funding and the project was halted for a good.
I may
period.
not be driving by the time you get it finished.
Yes, sir, Russell.
Mike Sears is the project manager on that one.
Oh,
And we
okay.
actually just barely got a preliminary set of plans in for that project.
Oh,
And
great.
it actually just just this week it came in, and I haven't had a chance to look at it, so I wasn't aware of it either till Mike mentioned it. But yeah, we do have that set of plans, preliminary.
Very good. I'm curious if they are, how much of the street they are reconstructing on Florence, and whether that northern section just south of 31st Street's in there. Well, very good. Well, if there's no other further questions, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. I appreciate your time for everybody joining in on this meeting, and thank you for your comments. I appreciate your work on this, Dennis, to get this project going. It looks like we're gonna have to wait a little bit longer, but it is gonna get done. This thing should
Okay.
not turn into another Richmond Hills, so it shouldn't be hanging on for another 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
Very good. Well, I appreciate it, everybody. Have a good evening, and thank
Have
you
a good
again.
evening. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you all. Bye.
Mhm.
All
Thank
right,
you,
thank you.
everybody.